Okay, so one of the first eminent women travellers to be connected with RSGS in its earliest years is a woman called Isabella Bird. And Isabella was born in 1831 in Yorkshire, and she had quite a privileged upbringing, good education, but it was her dream to travel abroad. She had this very independent nature. And originally, what happened with Isabella is that she had some kind of undefined illness, which meant that her parents sent her abroad for recuperation. It wasn't really ever defined as to what it was that was the matter with her. The main issue was that it was considered that it would be a good idea to send her to somewhere like Australia or New Zealand to recuperate. And so really this journey, which she undertook when she was still a young woman, actually set her off on this wonderful lifetime of travel. And Isabella went first of all to Australia, then New Zealand, and she decided that she was going to start off on her own as a solo woman explorer. And so she took herself first of all to Hawaii, which was then called the Sandwich Islands, and climbed most of the volcanoes in Hawaii, probably the second woman ever to do so in a couple of occasions. And then in 1872, from Hawaii, after having spent about 6 or 7 weeks there, she set sail and landed in California. And from California, because she was a brilliant horsewoman, she hired a horse and she took herself into the Rocky Mountains, which at that time was still a domain really of kind of pioneers. It was very much a man's domain of sort of fur trappers and cattle ranchers and kind of hard-bitten cowboys, really. And Isabella, for reasons known only to herself, I mean, she decided that she was going to go and live in this amazing country of mountains and quite a hard masculine lifestyle. And so she hired a horse, crossed into the Rocky Mountains, and she knew exactly where she was going. She must have read about it somewhere. It was a place called Estes Park, E-S-T-E-S, Estes Park, in the Rocky Mountains. And she met some characters there. She basically became a 19th century cowgirl. She was helping the cowboys round up the herds of cattle, and she was doing it brilliantly well because she was such a brilliant horsewoman. And she was keeping house for some people there for the cattle ranchers. She was having a wonderful time in quite extreme conditions because they were snowed in for the whole of the winter. And she had a romantic connection there too. She met a man in the Rocky Mountains who was living there, who had had quite a colourful career up until that point. He was a bit of a desperado, and he won her heart. And she was tied. She was feeling as if she had a decision to make, a life decision to make. And he wanted her to stay with him, become his wife. But at that time, she knew that she had a lifetime of adventure in front of her. And so she made the decision to leave and galloped away. And that was just the beginning of Isabella's story. And the most remarkable thing about Isabella is that in the 1800s, when just doing one or two of those things for a woman would have been scandalous in, polite society back in Britain, she made a lifetime's career of going to places which were considered very, very risky for women. And also she wrote about them. So she came back to Britain and she wrote best-selling books, which she compiled from her letters that she was writing to her sister back home in Britain. Everywhere she went, she was writing letters back home. So I really admire Isabella Bird because she managed to have a foot in both worlds. At a time when women were expected to conform to strict standards of behavior. They were supposed to settle down, get married, have children, not complain, just do all the things that were expected of them while wearing very constrictive clothing. And, there were so many ways in which a woman could transgress, as it were, the moral code of society, Isabella managed to just tear up the rule book in terms of where she went, what she did, how she did it. And she managed to come back to Britain and still preserve a respectable persona. She was very well respected in polite circles. She wrote books that became bestsellers. And so she managed to keep a career for herself and yet do exactly what she wanted. And she learned photography. She went down to London to the Royal Geographical Society, where she learned at quite a late age, I think she was in her 60s in terms of her traveling career, she learned how to take photographs. So when she traveled later on throughout Asia, she was taking cameras with her and she was developing the films under the night sky. So in effect, she was one of the world's first travel photographers. So she was documenting countries and places and landscapes before they became changed in many respects by the Western world, by Westernization. So she did remarkable things. And one of my favorite quotes by Isabella, she said that that travelers are privileged to do the most improper things. And, you know, that was just one of the privileges of travelers, that they could get away with it, you know, that they could do the most improper things with perfect propriety. That is one of the charms of traveling. And she knew it, and she knew that she was taking full advantage of it. And she was just such a, you know, you read her books, just for example, a lady's life in the Rocky Mountains, which completely describes, she's very open about her relationship with this man that she came across and all the other people that she was living with at the time. And she managed to describe this to her audiences back in Britain. And at the same time, she was coming back to Britain and was being celebrated as a great writer. And she was the first woman to receive the fellowship of the Royal Scottish Geographical Society, and deservedly so, you know, because she did the most amazing things at a time when she could so easily have been an outcast, really, for what she did. So that's Isabella, and I came across her fairly early on when I was writing about these women, because obviously she is the one that stands out as being the first fellow of the society.